Hey everyone, it's April 6th, and that means today is Sowen's birthday. You might not know who Sowen is right away, but chances are you've seen her artwork. Sowen has drawn me a tons of funny and cute pieces of fan art, usually based on memes and funny moments during my stream. And the one that most people have seen is probably the Pitfallception logo that she's hand drawn, but she's made a lot more. Sometimes she draws at my request, and at other times she's just inspired and draws something nice. And just like the other people featured in this video so far, Sowen has a favorite character that I asked for, and in her case it's Lewyn from FE4. Now, as usual with these videos, I want to focus on gameplay, but I do want to sidestep into him as a character for a little bit, because Lewyn is one of the very few characters in FE4 that actually has a character arc to speak of. And in the background you're gonna see some hastily recorded footage of Lewyn and friends in Chapter 4. The save file I used is from Arden, my Arden solo, so it's very unleveled Lewyn trying to make his way through. Maybe I'll throw in some other stolen footage just for the sake of variety, but anyway, this video will be very light on spoilers. There will basically be none, just because I want it to be accessible. So Lewyn, he has the most screen time out of any character in FE4. He beats out the Lords as well as several other characters that appear in both generations. And this actually annoys me a little bit, because a lot of the time that he spends in Gen 2, he's just dumping exposition on Seliph, and that could have been given to other characters, like Shannon and Oifi. Those two went through a lot of bad times over the course of 2 generations, and I think they really could have done with more time on the screen, so it makes me a little bit sad that instead of those two we just get a lot of Lewyn being honestly a bit of a dick sometimes. I get that a lot of it is like tough love to help Seliph grow up and rise to the challenges that lie in front of him, but I always thought that August from FE5 did this a lot better. While there is a good reason why Lewyn behaves this way, it still always left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Gen 2 Lewyn probably is more of a symptom than a cause of Generation 2's rushed writing, but he is still the face that's on the screen for a lot of it, so that might be why I'm blaming him. That said, Generation 1 Lewyn is one of my favorite characters in the game, full of characters that I like. He is a womanizer, but I like the way that he's written much better than other womanizers such as Sain, Heather, and Homer. Maybe it's because his trait isn't really beaten over my head as much. He's really only seen hitting on Sylvia and Irenes, and the way he treats them is pretty different too. Sain especially annoys me in this regard, because all his supports with female characters is just him hitting on them, and especially his Rebecca support is stupid, because it's her full-on rejecting him and they end up with a paired ending. I didn't think it was possible to write supports in a more stupid and unbelievable way than the S supports in Fates and Awakening, but I think the FE7 writers might have done it. Lewyn, on the other hand, is forced to grow up during the events of Chapter 4, and when he does, it opens up conversations with both his mom and Irenes. And it doesn't hurt that Lewyn, being the Prince of Silesia, was told to the player in his joining conversation with Iren, so by the time that he returned to his homeland, it doesn't come out of nowhere. This is in contrast to Joshua, who kinda just joins you because he lost a gamble with Natasha, then he shuts up for 10 chapters until Erika stumbles upon him in his home country, and it turns out he's actually the prince. This is why I consider Joshua basically budget Lewyn, not because Lewyn did it first, but because Lewyn was done better. Now, enough about Lewyn as a character, let's talk about the gameplay. I think Lewyn is one of the, if not the most famous broken character in the series. One of the characters who has a reputation for being unbeatable that reaches far and wide. Everyone knows, at least everyone who knows a little bit about FE4, knows about Holseti, also known as Forseti sometimes. And this is for a good reason, because I think if you were to tier weapons like you would tier characters, taking availability and utility and all that stuff into account, Holseti is probably the best holy weapon in FE4. It has 1-2 range, it's available in both generations, and of course it kills just about everything because it's a 30 might tome, backed by critical, adept, and sometimes pursuit. The funny thing is, before Lewyn gets Holseti, he's actually not all that good. He kinda gets by, but he's missing 2 core things that you really need to be strong in FE4. A mount and a pursuit skill. Without a mount, you generally cannot reach enemies before other characters do, and without pursuit, you can't double attack. And instead Lewyn has to rely on like adepts and critical procs to kill anything, and those are very unreliable. Now, all of this is easily forgotten if you give him the pursuit ring or the leg ring, or when you just proc those skills, which Holseti boosts the activation rate off, but from my experience, Lewyn really struggles to do anything significant until the last bit of Chapter 4. And when he does get Holseti, it's basically the end of Chapter 4, so he only really has 1 chapter to flex Holseti in. It's a good one, because there's a lot of strong bosses to kill, but it's basically Lewyn's endgame performance. So I think overall there's a pretty big difference in how good Lewyn is perceived to be by most players and how helpful he actually is. Between his joining time and near end of Chapter 4, I don't think it's a stretch to say that he's one of your worst units. Not one of the worst, He's not as bad as Azel or Arden or Tiltu, but he still 2-hit most enemies. With Elwind, he has 1 to range, but he needs to combine to get kills. And he's actually pretty fragile. Most melee enemies will kill him in 2 hits, so while his enemy phase might be better than that of your bow users, he still has to spend a lot of time being protected from enemies. Now, does that make Lewyn a low tier unit? I don't know, it's been a long time since I made an FE4 tier list, but I think if you try to judge him on an efficient playthrough, it's really hard to justify him being better than some of the more mediocre mounts like Midir or Alec. Which is kind of silly, because if you asked any casual player who just beat FE4 for the first time, they would definitely rate Lewyn higher than both of those. I think if you straight up compare Lewyn's Chapter 5 combat to that of Midir and Alec, Lewyn would win every time, like no questions asked, but I think there is more to rating units than that. That said, Lewyn is still super satisfying to use. He gets so strong that enemies just refuse to attack him at times, since they have 0 hit. And then wind animations in FE4, they're just gorgeous. FE4 in general is praised for its smooth animations, but I just love the Elwood and whole-setting animations and sound effects, and Lewyn's battle sprites themselves are great too. So yeah, Lewyn, he's a lot of fun, definitely one of my favorites from FE4. If you haven't played FE4 yet, go ahead and do it, because it's a great game, and the sooner you play it, the sooner you'll be immune to spoilers about the game. Definitely use Lewyn when you have the chance, he's a lot of fun, and that's really all I'm about to say. So have a good day, especially to Sowen, and I'll see you all next time.